Hi, and welcome everyone else to this lovely event. This is one of the, we can't see you, but we know you're there. Um, and we're very touched that you've all made it. This is one of the kind of the great pleasures of this strange topsy-turvy world that we live in, that we can actually all have this conversation thanks to Zoom, even though we're scattered all over the world. It's very late where you are, Deborah. It's even later where I am, slightly. And no doubt there are many of you listening, tuning in, who will similarly be at so slightly strange times of the day or night. Deborah, we're here to celebrate the release in the US of your magnificent third volume of your memoir. But before we get to what your idea is, why don't you say a few words about real estate, the third volume of this project that begins with things I don't want to know. Is developed by cost of living, and now sort of evolves into real estate. Tell us about this, the idea behind this wonderful body that you call a living autobiography. Why living autobiography rather than memoir?
Hello, Tash, and thank you for doing this. I know it's a very strange time for you. It's 1 in. It's midnight for me. So we are having a nocturnal conversation. And hello to everybody. Thank you to the Centre for Fiction and to Bloomsbury, my publishers. So your question was real estate.
Real estate and the whole idea of a living autobiography.
Yeah.
To get to what constitutes that living autobiography, I've always been, from the moment I heard the term living autobiography, I was fascinated by it.
Well, I have this idea that autobiographies are something you write at the end of your life, and that you have to be very grand to write one. And so it was such a preposterous dare to begin these living autobiographies. Um, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not going to, there's no salacious gossip about famous people. Not that's a bad thing. It's just isn't my game in these books. Living because I didn't want them to be nostalgic, looking back at the past. I wanted them to be in the storm of life, in in um, in the everyday of quite an ordinary life. In Are they very selective? They're not a whole life. So living autobiography seemed to be just a made up word, and it seemed right to me. And then I had to land the first two with real estate. And here I was looking at a number of things. I conceptually like the idea that you would kind of physically hold in your hand my real estate, the book, and then it would be up to readers to figure whether it was a terrible investment or not. So it's about a real physical yearning for a house and home, and it looks at that. It looks at the fantasy of a portfolio full of unreal estate. So all the imagined houses in which we make a world that is pleasing, comforting, exciting, erotic, whatever. So there's lots of unreal estate in this book. And then conceptually, I sort of widen it out a bit. I look at leaving a homeland. So I was born in South Africa, and we had to leave when I was 9. So the departure from my land of birth and the arrival in England. I was looking at, if patriarchy is the main house, is the real estate and owns all the deeds to the land, who then are its sitting tenants?
Mm.
Are we trespassers?
No, absolutely. Just sort of because I have you there at this sort of very interesting intersection between real estate as a dwelling place and real estate as a way some parts of society actually hold the keys to, I mean, the title deeds to actually, and therefore ownership and exercise domain over other people in society. And in this case, it's the patron. It's you do, you have this very sort of subtle but always very present way of seeing how men exercise this right of domain over women.
Yeah, I mean, that's real estate is sort of it sort of gave me the opportunity to explore who owns the keys and or the deeds, and how might we own the deeds to our own lives. Yes, so it explores home in many ways, starting with Things I Don't Want to Know, the very first one, going on to The Cost of Living, which is about leaving the marital home and making another structure altogether, and then real estate is kind of very playful in a way with the idea, with many ideas.
You and I have talked many times, and this forms the basis of a lot of our conversations about, obviously, a sense of belonging, because we're both somewhat as people who have come from other places and set up homes and try to carve out an existence in countries far from our countries of origin. And the home, the physical space, therefore becomes very important. I think it becomes charged with a certain sort of significance that you've already spoken about. So in real estate, there's a sense in which you're becoming more and more restless for this in your search for a physical space that will kind of give you some sort of fulfillment. And that's how I read it. That might be a lot of projection, but it's geographically quite sort of mobile. We see you in London. We see the narrator. We'll come back to this. We see the I in London. We see Paris a lot. We see the I narrator, a person who shares a lot of similarities with you, in Berlin, in New York, always searching for this sense of not just belonging in a sort of a more emotional way, but actually looking for a physical space. You talk about your apartment.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm going to read a couple of pages that maybe expand on that idea.
Cool.
I'm just going straight into about page 40 of Real Estate. I had spent so much of my life peering into the windows of estate agents, searching for my very own domain, my face pressed against the windows, along with the ghosts of other dreamers looking for homes we could not afford. Nevertheless, I believed that one day when I grew up, I would earn myself the keys to a house of my own in the Mediterranean with honeysuckle and balconies. At the same time, a mean little voice in my head was always saying, "This is not real. It will never be yours." Yes, I had spent a long time trying to have a more bourgeois life. Somehow it seemed hard to get one. My colleagues, who really did have well-developed bourgeois lives, were always trying to be less bourgeois, but I wanted to move into the neighborhood. Bonjour! Isn't the air a delight here? Look at our country cottages with their tangle of pink climbing roses. Look on Twitter. Our ducks are sleeping under the willow trees. Look at our dining tables and its constellation of chairs. Look at the art on our walls, our salad bowls and oriental poppies, our Victorian porcelain and wildflower meadows. Look at the slice of buttered toast next to the modernist lamp. Look, look, look at you looking. Here we are setting off on our country walk with Molly, our sweet-natured Burmese python. If real estate is a self-portrait and a class portrait, it is also a body arranging its limbs to seduce. So we kind of start there with that kind of longing. Yeah.
But that, I mean, even from that passage, it's clear that real estate means so much more to you than just, you know, the particulars in a real estate agent's window. It's more than just the, you know, the house or the, you know, 3-bedroom apartment. It's obviously the sense of belonging, the sense of sort of trying to redefine who you are, but also, you know, it's political. There are connotations of class. There are connotations of wanting to change yourself in a way that is a pronouncement against the, you know, against social structures. Is that something you were aware of when you were writing the book?
No, not really. So like this, it's absolutely political. It's absolutely a book about authorship and identity. It's absolutely about the necessity to have a table and chairs around it and to welcome strangers to that table. That's really at the heart of the book. To live, to discard those who cannot live warmly with us is personal and political. To create I think every time we create something like home, we're creating a sort of utopia. It can be very humble. There is a sort of grand idea of utopia, but I'm much more interested in the humility, in a more humble version of utopia, which I believe we create in every place we go. You know, so there's that. The books are a kind of, all 3 books are a mashup of travel writing, philosophy, and politics. And I think that the kind of form of the living autobiography, or a more essayistic form, was really interesting to me. It allowed me to expand on all sorts of things that in some ways, the novel doesn't allow me to do in the same way, because you can kind of derail a novel um, with something very discursive and fascinating to oneself, um, in a way that I don't find, I didn't find that it disrupted the more memoirish writing. It's a really interesting thing. I was thinking about this today, that in my novels, I still think about all the characters that I have created in every single novel. They're actually quite lively inside me. So, you know, sometimes I wonder if you have this, Tash, too. Maybe you really don't. But, you know, sometimes I look at my novels swimming home and I think, I really wonder if I should have given Kitty Finch a whole chapter, so that she's not always reacting to other people, um, and they not always reacting to her. Maybe I could have made something silent and interesting for her. I'd like I always feel that there's something more to do with characters in novels. The same with The Man Who Saw Everything. I was passing the Abbey Road in London yesterday on my bike, and there was the famous zebra crossing, and I end The Man Who Saw Everything with a character called Luna. So no spoilers, but I lift her from communist East Germany in 1988 to the Abbey Road in 2016. And I noticed that it's autumn here, it's the fall, so people were sweeping up the leaves. And I thought, I began the novel with leaves. I wish I'd put a few leaves around Luna's spectral feet. So there's always something more to do in my mind with characters in my novels. But interestingly, in the living autobiographies, I don't feel that. I feel that kind of the art of memoir for me is really not just to write about myself, but to write about other people, to write about society, to do that in all sorts of ways, through objects. In The Cost of Living, there's a clock that it's a bird clock that has a different bird call every hour. And that does quite a lot of the talking uh, in The Cost of Living. But I feel that its world of people um, sort of make the right exits and entrances, that there's nothing else I really want to do with them. So that's you know, that's really interesting to
And
me.
I feel that a lot of uh, the kind of the disruptive and the free flowing nature of the living autobiographies um, it hinges on, both in a philosophical sense and a technical sense, on the I narrator, who we presume is you. But actually, tell us a little bit more about how you feel, or how you see the I narrator, and how, in a sense, she. I mean, to me, this is. I mean, I read it as as being absolutely crucial to be able to um, involve and absorb all these other sort of factors, all these other worlds and people, because she's not unlike what you were just saying about Kitty Finch. She's she's always there, reacting to other people. She picks up things.
Mm.
What is her position?
The I in the living autobiographies is is quite like myself, but not quite myself, because the I is the avatar. Um, you know, in a way quite similar to a novel, and also very different. But what I was exploring with the narrator, as I sometimes call her, is not a fixed eye, but a porous eye.
Mm.
So that would be very boring, you know, if if it was, to me anyway, if that wasn't the case. So it's a very fluid eye that's working its way through the terrains of this book. Um, here's something I'd like to read. It's just a few lines from Virginia Woolf, and it's from her essay, Professions for Women. And it was something that I found really liberating when I started this project and found it today. Where, let me just find it. Yeah, so this is Woolf. Ah, but what is herself? I mean, what is a woman? I assure you, I do not know. I do not believe you know. I do not believe that anybody can know until she has expressed herself in all the arts and professions open to human skill. So I love that question. You know, uh, I don't know. I don't believe you know. So that was very interesting to me, and uh, encouraging actually, in a sense, because I could just have this eye be in the world and notice what she noticed. She notices what she notices and embody a mind, actually. And the question is, the question of reading back this preposterous project of 3 living autobiographies. It was always, I found it quite interesting to read back when I was starting the first one, because, you know, I was always ready to abandon them. I just thought, no, I don't write um, how-to books. I don't write self-help books. Um, what the kind of essayistic writing, the great works of literature are James Baldwin's essays for me, Woolf's essays for me, Elizabeth Hardwick's say. There are many, many more. At the time, I had not read Annie Ernaux, which I now have, and Natalia Ginsburg say. So reading back the very first sort of like 10 pages of things I don't want to know, that was extraordinary to me, because I'd never written an essay, say, in the first person. I mean, I don't know about you, but at school and university, we didn't write, you know, about the stainless steel industry on the Rhine.
Yeah, they're much more factual, formalistic in that way.
Yeah. So the first heading in Things I Don't Want to Know is political purpose, which I have stolen from George Orwell. And what's the first line? It's something like, that spring when life was very hard and I could not see where there was to get to, and I was at war with my lot, I seemed to cry most on escalators. And I'd look at this and I say, but the heading is political purpose. And I got what I had to do. I didn't bore me. That's the first thing. And, you know, I know you know this too. It has to get through, the writing has to sort of get through its most brutal reader, if you like. And hopefully that's the writer. And I just continued, and it seemed that I was finding a voice that was intimate but formal. And yeah, so that well, it was quite a steady voice, more serene, I'm sure, than I felt. at the time of writing it, but somehow that was its manifestation. So all voice, and it was the voice that steers these books through the worlds it inhabits.
That's it's sort of so illuminating to for me to hear the I narrator in that way, because I feel that she's so crucial in bringing to life this whole notion of the autobiography or the memoir being something alive. Because even when you talk about the past, there's a way in which it doesn't feel consigned to the past. It doesn't feel fixed. It still feels attached. First of all, attached to today, to the now, to the I narrator in her present state.
Contemporary world, yeah.
But also that past is the I narrator still questioning it now. And a lot of that questioning, right from things I don't want to know into cost of living and to real estate, and you're writing real estate now, from a different position, you're writing it from a position of, dare I say, much, of great prominence, of authority, and still the I narrator is questioning and grappling and engaging with the world around her. And a lot of it is to do with her status as an insider, but really an outsider, mainly an outsider, I would say, but not totally. She's sort of straddling this line. You're never quite sure. She's, when we see her in one setting, she's an insider. When we see her in another, she's an outsider. So it's this viewpoint that I sort of really related to. Was that something you were sort of?
Yes, it's something we talk about a lot, isn't it, Tash? I mean, and I know that you have just written a brilliant memoir, Strangers on a Pier. So we don't want to be fetishized as outsiders. We want a chance to kind of not be described, not to. So how are we going to do that? We're going to have to describe ourselves as best we can, and our friends, and all the rest of it. So yes, insider, outsider. And that's that change, that that you can be an insider on Tuesday and an outsider on Wednesday. It just depends on who's doing the describing, who's doing the pointing, who's doing the looking, and who's doing the feeling. Maybe I can read a little bit in relation to that question. This is real estate. It's from Real Estate, and it's the Paris section. So I start with a quote from Gertrude Stein, and from her book, Paris, France, which was published in 1940. So this is Stein. After all, everybody, that is, everybody who writes, is interested in living inside themselves in order to tell what is inside themselves. That is why writers have two countries, the one they belong and the one in which they live really. So I have moved to Paris, and I begin it like this. A man was selling pink roses near Metro Abbas for €5. He looked hungry, down on his luck, so I bought a bunch from him. When I took the roses home to my new apartment in Montmartre, I discovered they were odd lengths. Some were so short they did not even fit into a cup. He must have picked them in haste, perhaps in a park. He had wrapped them in a map of the metro. Some of the petals had come loose and stuck to the map. It looked like a poem, maybe from Baudelaire's Les Fleurs de Mal. I pierced a pin through the petals so they were attached to the map, Metro Rennes and Notre Dame des Champs, and then stuck it on the wall with blue tape. those metro stops were not too far from the Luxembourg Gardens, where there is a rose garden. And here's Georgia O'Keeffe. When you take a flower in your hand and really look at it, it's your world for the moment. I want to give that world to someone else. So that's really the point of writing, isn't it? I mean, you know, what else are we doing? The rose seller had given me some of his world. They were unhomely roses. These flowers did not freeze under the scrutiny of my gaze. They were breathing, very much alive, chaotic, displaced. They were roses traveling like people who have no homes across the metro all night. At the same time, flowers were opening and closing, shivering, performing and growing on the stone walls of my unreal estate. And so um, in the kind of, so this book is sort of about reality and fantasy, and the collision of the two. So the in the unreal estate, I'm always growing mimosa trees, and there's a pomegranate tree, and all kinds of, you know, all kinds of things are going on there. But I always start with something small that happens in life, like buying those unhomely roses. Yeah.
You're so wonderful at that passage. Sort of just is such a lovely example of how you're so wonderful with detail like that. A lot of the detail, the opening of real estate has you buying a banana tree.
Yeah. Yes, the banana tree is bought in East London, and it's taken back to my apartment, and it begins to grow wildly, scarily big. And my youngest daughter is about to leave home and go to university. And I've become so obsessed with the banana tree that she tells me that this banana plant is my third child. And she begins to get quite jealous of it. And when she leaves for university, she says, "Don't forget to water your third child." So the banana tree is the sort of beginning of everything. Um, and um, and I also begin with Georgia O'Keeffe, because she had searched for this incredible house in New Mexico. She had found her final house in New Mexico, a place to live and work at her own pace. As she insisted, it was something she had to have. I was also searching for a house in which I could live and work and make a world at my own pace. But even in my imagination, this home was blurred, undefined, not real or not realistic, or lacked realism. I yearned for a grand old house. It had fountains and wells, remarkable circular stairways, etc. Um, so then, who else is in this house? This is another sort of thread to the book. And it's a very playful book in that sense, because I sort of so well, there's a kind of phantom, a person who you know, there might be a hint of love in the house. We hope so. And this phantom is peeling an orange by the fireplace, watched by the narrator. So the book operates on all these levels. And I think, Tash, it just reflects my own strange reading and tastes. You know, here we go. I have a great old-fashioned love for surrealist art. I'm very taken by the somber clarity of George Orwell, say. You wouldn't necessarily put those two influences together and bang them together, but somehow somehow I have.
But then, well, that's another one of the joys of living through these living autobiographies with the eye narrator, is that, which is that she does have such wide-ranging taste and such, sort of such ferocious curiosity about the world around her. I think we have to go to questions quite soon, so I'm going to ask one, which probably, I'm sorry everyone else if this slightly steals your fire, but the really inquisitive person in me, because you mentioned the banana tree, and you mentioned mimosas and pomegranate trees. These are all trees that speak of warmth and the sun. Can you give us a clue as to, your unreal real estate, whether that becomes more real when you think about the sun, and whether that, I mean, it's an obvious question to ask, but does that in any way have anything to do with your early years in South Africa, or do you just like the sun?
I'm sure it does. I mean, I'm sure the sort of muscle memory of light and sunshine is there, and my love, and it is my love. But more than that, Tash, my love is swimming. So I swim every day, and preferably in the sun. Although I have been, I swam in the rain today, in the torrential rain in London today. So the answer to that question is yes, absolutely. Heat is good. There is a sort of paragraph, isn't there, where I write, well, I would be quite happy with a small wooden cabin over a lake, but I look down on myself for not having a bigger dream.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if we want to go to questions yet, Melanie, or do we?
We do have some questions from the audience, so why don't we go ahead and do that? So we've got a question from Athena Walgore. What got cut from the living biography and why?
That's a great question. Thank you. I suppose I cut. I think so. There are 3 living autobiographies, and generally, I cut things when I felt that I hadn't bestowed enough dignity on the people who walk through my life, or I had given too little information or too much information. So so much of writing is about the reveal and the conceal, or just giving the right information at the right time, never mind, the making of sentences and all of that. So I also, they're very selective as well. So sometimes I went back a little further into childhood, but I decided that I would take that out. So in things I don't want to know, I think I'd said as much as I wanted to about younger years, because the odd thing is, and I don't recommend, I don't think this is a good thing, but when I read autobiographies, I tend to skip childhood and get interested when the protagonist sort of leaves home, or and has some ideas of their own. Yeah.
All right, great, thank you. So Carol DeSanti wants to know, or says, I love the economy of your prose and the specificity of the events you choose. Can you talk about your process in writing these 3 books?
Yeah. So I do like, do like spare chisel prose. It's just my taste, you know. How can you say as much as possible with as little as possible? How can you create a sort of underpull in the work without melodrama? Because it's quite, you know, how can you, how can I tell a fragment of a story without the whole story and somehow make it meaningful? So those were questions, and I like to start, I think, with an image or an action. So things that I want to know is the narrator trying to hold back tears on an escalator, on a moving machine. Things that the cost of living actually starts in Colombia, overhearing a conversation between a young woman and an older man, and real estate starts with the purchase of a plant. So they start with quite ordinary, everyday things, and I guess the selection that you're talking about is really to do with choosing something that can chase my arguments, hold my feelings, and yeah, something like that.
Thank you. Let's see. Adam Hobbin says, how do you think the physical spaces that you move through and occupy bear upon the ideas that you explore? For example, do you feel being in London opens doors onto different ideas and thoughts than being in Paris does? I'm curious about the influence of physical space in the context of a book on real and unreal estate.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So London, London is old. It's very dusty and grimy, and then in contradiction to that, there are lots of green spaces, and the volume. I always think of London as that London has quite a soft volume. I know this is a strange way of thinking about things as a tone. People would disagree with me, say it's loud and rowdy and all the rest, but that's not my experience at all. And then there is how can I put this? Then there's a need to get out of London, especially with Brexit, and especially yeah, particularly that. And Paris, yep, that will be a different sort of writing. That's got a that has the art of living in the everyday in Paris is quite developed. It's valued. It's even if it's just having a tiny espresso and stirring one sugar lump into it and having a long conversation with someone. No one's going to move you from your table in Paris. So it's a good city to talk and to walk. So yes, as you know, all of this is kind of worked through in the books.
Yeah, but can I just nip in very quickly? I'm aware of the the impact of moving between these two cities. Are you aware of the impact that move has on your writing? Are you sensitive to that?
Well, I don't know if it does. I mean, in some ways, I really, it has an effect on my spirit, on my mood. I notice different things. I like to hear lots of languages, even if I don't understand them. Just the cadence of other languages. I like to negotiate new traffic rules. I'm just kind of like that sort of thing. You know, and how people walk their dogs and all of that. But actually, I think that the focus on writing, you know, you just have to be so ruthless to write, because it just requires so much time and attention. It's very inspiring to me.
I know, just curious.
Write somewhere that to write somewhere else. Yeah.
No, I'm just curious, because I think for me, the moves I make, they always unlock something, but the unlocking always makes me think about how I feel about Southeast Asia, not about actually any Western city. It's very odd. Anyway, I know we have a lot more questions, so we should let people go.
So Karen Warren says, and this is in quotes, but what is herself? And she says, how have you, Deborah, been shaped by the writing of real estate?
Thank you for that question. I don't know is the answer to that. I feel very changed by writing the living autobiographies. You know, I think that what I left in real estate is both the turbulence of the narrator. Sometimes she's powerful, sometimes she's vulnerable. I think that's how it has to be. I think that's how these living autobiographies should be, and how they are. They've landed in a way that feels true to herself.
A couple of people want to know about your journaling. One says, have you kept a diary all of your life, especially when you're a child? Did you then or now add drawings? And someone else wants to know if you kept a journal separate to the project of writing your autobiographies.
Yes, I do keep journals. It's really odd. So I have shelves in my study of journals, and whole boxes full of them. But and I love to write, you know, with them with a pen, just to be off screen. So that's such a pleasure in itself, and I find that I can catch a thought in a way, in journals, in a way that I can't on the screen, because on the screen I said I want to order things, I want to make coherence, I want it to find its shape. I'm impatient, but somehow the pen allows me a different kind of freedom. And in my journals, I don't really ever write about feelings. I just write quite boring things down. A woman feeding the pigeons, and I noticed that she's painted on one eyebrow. Her left eyebrow is very high, sort of near her hairline, and I write that down, and then I might and then I write about melon seeds, the way that someone has cut a melon and the seeds have spilt over someone's shoes. Or I write about an injustice, a sort of undermining tone that I've overheard. I make a note of it and I think about it, or an action, or the violence of a gaze, you know, and how that person has to steer it and negotiate it, and I think about it, and I write that down. So that's the sort of stuff that's in my journals. There's really not very much about the moon and the stars. There's quite a lot about flowers, I admit, and quite a lot about the sirens in cities, and in Paris in particular, the fashion for electric scooters that are very fast, and the sort of you just have to jump out of the way. I've written quite a lot about that too, and I write about food, the kinds of dishes that are tasted and liked or loathed, and I write about what's happening politically in cities that I find myself in too. So when I was in Paris, I wrote quite a lot about the Gilets jaunes, etc.
So one more question. Let's see. Are you still searching for the perfect piece of real estate?
I am. I really am. And I hope that I find it, on the one hand, but maybe, you know, maybe the joy is never quite finding it, so that you keep the desire for it alive. But yes, I am. And but we don't want to be too literal about it either, although it's very important, because I think my point, at the end of the book Real Estate is that my properties are my books.
And they should be all of your properties too, because they're brilliant. I want to say too, I know a lot of our audience are people who like to write and who are trying to learn how to write for an audience. And I feel like this book and The Man Who Saw Everything put together are a masterclass in writing if you read carefully enough.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been an absolute joy to listen to both of you. Tash, thank you so much. Deborah, thank you. Thank you to our audience.
Thank you for hosting, and thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Melanie, for those words. And Tash, I can't thank you enough. It's about like 2 o'clock your time. And thank you to our invisible audience, and for your great questions.
And I hope you both get some good rest, and we'll see you all again in the future, hopefully in person someday.
You too.